Hi, Larry. How you been?
Hi, folks. We're back. Me, my pal, Jimmy.
Also, Larry, I want to make sure that the people know that you do like what we do each week. Please hit like and then subscribe. Thanks, guys.
And tell them to email me some questions. I'm getting a lot of good questions.
Oh, yes. Also, underneath it, you'll see the email. Please write in and we get some really dynamite questions, and it'll be really great to hear from you people. And a lot of interesting stuff is going to be shared back and forth.
You know, sooner or later, you're going to have to catch on because I can't keep telling you what to do all the time. Anyway, I think the next two episodes, what we're going to talk about is a couple of friends of mine and a couple of people that are not too friendly that had the same problem I had. And that's a gambling addiction. And it don't only affect guys like me or guys that are middle-class guys. It affects everybody, many people. In fact, one of them I could name because I was in California for a while was the producer of Luck in New York, one of them New York police shows. His name was David Milch. Guy lost over $100 million betting on horses and sports, but nobody knows about it because he could afford it. But then these guys like me that go through what I went through, and then guys like Stu Ungar, who I'm going to talk about right now. And just to give him a little introduction about Stu, he was raised in a goulash joint in Harlem, New York, and was regarded at the age of 10 years old as the greatest gin player in the world. And he dropped out of school maybe 10, 11 years old to support his family after his parents died. And right off the bat, he was known maybe from 10, 15 years old as the greatest gin player in the world. And
he beat everybody. He beat everybody.
He beat everybody, no matter who it was. And when these heavyweight guys, everybody thinks they're the best gin player, but the real guys, when they came to Harlem to play him and they look across the table, not only was he like 15, but he weighed about 70 pounds. Little guy. Oh, you know. And unlike this guy here, whatever he did, it was all 100% legit. He had a photographic memory. After three cards, he could tell you what you had in your hands, what you had in your hand, and he was unbelievable. And the guys that were close to being at his level, they would play for days, and he would outlast them, and he was just unbelievable. Unlike Jimmy, he's the only guy I've seen, and I've seen a few of them, that could deal seconds from a shoe. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he does it, but he's the guy you don't want to play cards with. And if you're ever in a game and you see that guy,
well, thanks for telling everybody, Larry, and ruining all my games. For any future games.
Well, where are you going to go? Nobody around here is going to play it. But anyway, okay, let's get back to Stu. One day, I think it was around 1972, 73, Richie, a friend of mine, Richie Adamo, he was from Harlem. I had a horse, I was partners with him, and he always came up to Monticello for the summer. And he says to me, I'm going to bring a kid up here, and that's the first time I met Stewie. I think he was 15, 16, whatever he was. I don't remember. Maybe he was 20. I couldn't tell because he looked like a little kid. And he said he has to get out of New York for a while because he makes hundreds of thousands playing gin with guys from all over the country, but he also loses hundreds of thousands betting sports. Same horses and sports, same addiction. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And so he had to leave New York before something bad happened to him. He owed everybody money. So he comes up to Monticello. And I told him that during the summer months, all the hotels, especially the Concord, they have all the the husbands drop the wives off up there during the summer months, but on the weekends the husbands come up and they have some of these very, very big gin games, and everybody seems to think that they're the best gin player. So I told Stewie when he got there, I says, look, I'll set these games up for you, and whatever you make, you can keep. I don't need it. I have the horses, plus whatever I do with the horses, I'll let you know. You'll be with Richie, and maybe you can get yourself out of trouble. Well, he did. He stayed there for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and he won a lot of money, got himself out of trouble with all the guys in New York, and won a few $100,000 and busted out everybody. Never lost a gin game. Some went on for 2-3 days in a row, but he never lost. And when that kind of dried up, he went to Vegas. There was no more I could do for him because my earning potential was down to zero because Tony stopped calling. We went through that already. So he went to Vegas, and he was in Vegas a few years, and he ran out of guys.
He turned to poker.
Well, yeah, he ran out. Right. Nobody was playing gin no more. Right. They come from all over the world to play him, and after 3-4 years, there wasn't a guy in one country in the whole world that would play him gin. He beat everybody. So he went to poker, Hold'em. Right. So he joined the poker tour. I think it was 1979, 78. He entered the first
Binions.
But yeah, he entered the Hold'em tournament, that $1 million
right.
thing that they had.
Binions $1 million
and the
tournament.
first
right.
time he entered it, he won.
Right.
Then he won again.
Yeah, he was only 20 years old, or 19 or something.
He won 3 in a row. I think that was never done before, only done more. I don't think it was ever done before.
Yeah, they gave him the gold bracelet.
Yeah, and they named a chip after him, I think. But anyway, so he's winning millions and millions of dollars. Now, at this time, there was a period of time, and I can't remember what years, because it was not even years, it was months, when Tony wouldn't call. I got jammed up. Checks, I couldn't let one check bounce because then I lose my whole kite thing, and Charles would get mad at me. I needed maybe $70,000, $80,000 to stop these checks from bouncing. I still had 3-4 days, but the future wasn't looking bright, and I couldn't depend on Tony for calling. I flew out to Vegas. And I go see Stewie, and he gave me $100,000.
Wow!
And well, he was doing well, but he was gambling. But he was on a win streak, and he had it. And he gave me the $100,000. And I flew back, straightened out a couple of things, and then I get a phone call a few years later, and it's from Stewie. What Stewie was doing. And it's unbelievable what a small world it is. He was winning millions of dollars, so naturally he had excellent credit, very much like me back when excellent credit. And no matter where he went, what they would give him, whatever markers for anything, and whatever bookmaker he called, they would give him credit, whatever he wanted, he would get. Well, he started betting after he ran out of money with Spilotro, Tony Spilotro. Now, for you guys that don't remember, he was the guy in Vegas from Chicago that ran all of in fact, the movie Casino was about Tony Spilotro. Pesci played his part. And I get a phone call, and he says, Larry, I don't know what kind of shape you're in, but if there's any way you could help me, help me. I says, what's the matter? And he tells me. He stuck a little over $100,000 to Spilotro and another 100, maybe another 100 to some other bookmaker that's out of town. Wow. I said, I'll be right out. So I flew out there, and I brought, I think, 120, 130,000 with me. And at that time, Frank Cullatta was out there with him. So as soon as I land, I get a hold of Frank Cullatta. And I tell him the whole story. He brings me to Tony. And we brought Stewie with me. I brought Stewie with me. And I says, what's he owe you? And he told me, and I paid Tony. And I says, now listen, there's another guy. I told Frank this. I says, there's another guy that he owes. I don't know the guy. I says, but Stewie says he owes him, I think, 120,000. I don't remember. So I says, I have it here. Frank, could you straighten it out for him? So Frank says to Tony, he says, what do you want to do? And Tony says, who, that? Fuck him. Keep it. I says, I don't care who gets it, but you got to straighten it out with him. I don't want Stewie to have a problem. And I says, Stewie was a friend of mine. I told him the story from way back. And Spilotro's reason, I says, you know.
That wasn't cool, though.
The kid weighs 80 pounds, you know. He says he brought a fucking gun to my house. He didn't. He had it. He had it with him. But that was the excuse that he gave. Not that he had to make an excuse for me. I was just happy to get out of there.
Is that when Stewie was going through his personal problems?
He was going through hell, and spent millions and millions every night. A different hooker for $1,000, $2,000 every night. Just it was sad, and cocaine.
Yeah.
Bad. Millions and millions and millions. I couldn't stop gambling. Just could not stop gambling. Very much like me. So I could relate. I could relate to that.
You know, Michael Perioli from The Sopranos played him in a movie. Played Stewie's part.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He played
I know that they made a movie.
It was his bio. Yeah, it was the movie. Yeah.
I know they made a movie about Stewie. They did a bunch of documentaries
Michael
about
Perioli is
because he was
Stu
an
Ungar.
amazing kid. He was amazing. You could deal out 10 cards, put the cards in a deck after 3 cards. He'd tell you what you got in your hand. He was just, I don't know how he did it. He was unbelievable, just unbelievable. And it was an experience standing behind him and watching guys that come in with their big cigars and everything, and
right, thinking they know it all.
Is this who I'm playing? Yeah, okay.
Right.
And he crushes them.
This kid was unbelievable.
So anyway, okay, that gets settled. That part of his life gets settled, and I go back home, and the next thing I hear is that I'll read what was written about him. It's so sad. On November 20th, 1998, Ungar checked into room number 6 at the Oasis Motel, a budget motel located at the end. He went from suites in the hotels to a budget motel on a Las Vegas strip. Yeah. Ungar paid just $48 per night for the room. On November 22nd, he was found in his room dead, lying on the floor, fully clothed and with the television off. Doyle Brunson, the guy who owned, was quoted, "Everybody felt terrible, but it wasn't a surprise." Among his possessions was $800 of the $25,000 advance that Bob Sputnik, the guy who owned that hotel, anyway.
But the Stratosphere?
Yeah. Right. Who earlier in the month signed a contract with him to pay off all his debts. Nobody knows where the rest of the money went. They just found him dead. An autopsy showed traces of drugs in his system, but it wasn't enough to kill him. It wasn't the cause of death. The medical examiner concluded that death was the result of a heart condition brought on by years of drug abuse. Despite having won an estimated $60 million during his poker career and in Vegas, Ungar died with no assets to his name. They took a collection for his funeral and raised enough money for his services. In 2003, his life was made into a movie, The High Roller, the Stu Ungar story, followed in 2006 by a documentary, One of a Kind, The Rise and Fall of Stu Ungar. A few books followed. Now, that's a sad ending, but I could relate to all of these things. Stewie had two addictions. One was gambling, the other one was drugs. And it was sad, but I don't know which one was worse, because from what I understand, of all the addictions, from porn to drinking to drugs to gambling, all of the suicides are from gambling addiction. Because if you could stop watching porn, you could stop drinking, you can stop drugs. But when you stop gambling, you stop at the point where you have nothing in the whole world. And in my case, not only did I have nothing, I owed $700,000-800,000. And it becomes tough. And people say to me all the time, aren't you afraid? Does fear ever come into the picture? And I can only answer this way. If, first of all, it becomes a way of life, and fear is part of my way of life. And if it wasn't for the fear factor, I wouldn't do what I do. Fear stops you from running. Fear stops you from not paying. Fear stops you. So is there fear? Yes. But when it comes a way of life, it's just part of your life. You just know that, well, I better have 15,000, 16,000 this weekend, otherwise there's a good chance I'm going to be dead. And you don't think about it anymore, but the fear is what makes you go get the money. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible addiction. And a very good friend of mine, when I wrote the book, I might as well say it. A very good friend of mine, when I wrote the book, we had dinner one night, and he says to me, and a heavyweight guy, he says to me, why'd you write this book? And I said, I have a couple of reasons for writing it. He says, there's no reason. You don't put out your dirty laundry. Yeah, now, that's mob talk. But here's the other thing about mob talk. I asked two mob guys, heavyweight guys, way up there. One was in his 80s, and the other one was in his 40s. I said, what would you do if you were me in 1984, when you made a comeback from 78 to 84? 78, I was penniless. By 84, I had 130 horses, 7 of the wealthiest owners in the country, and owned 7 homes. Each had a girl and 2 cars in the garage. I bought a barn, condominium type barn. Every 10 stalls was, I think, $200,000. I bought the whole barn, 40 stalls. I had 130 horses in training, if I said that. Half of them racehorses, half of them yearlings and 2-year-olds. I had maybe close to $1 million in the bank. And I had opportunities with 2 different owners. One was Alan August and one was Larry Kadish, that I could have gotten involved with their businesses and today probably been a billionaire, which Larry Kadish is today. They gave me opportunities that I'll never have again, and opportunities that so rare come along. And I turned them all down.
Yeah, to pursue what you wanted
to pursue. I just wanted to be I've been my own man my whole life. I never joined the mob because I didn't want to have to ask permission to do anything. I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I had my hang-ups. I paid the price. If I was wrong, I paid the price, no matter what it was.
If you think about it, that fear would have held you in check from going overboard, though. Be honest.
The fear, well, that's one thing. The fear knowing that I may lose and owe, say you, $100,000, that wasn't fear. The fear came after I lost $100,000 and you showed up and put a gun in my mouth. Then that became fear. But prior to that, prior to losing, there's no fear involved. It's just an addiction.
And this is all figurative now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know you would never do that.
Love you too much, Larry.
So I asked and this all was right around 1984. This is all I had. I basically had an empire. Doing very, very well, doing what I really love to do. I finally, after Tannenbaum threw me out and destroyed my life, I finally, with the help of Charles Slutsky, I finally crawled back. And Slutsky helped me a lot. Slutsky, who not only allowed me to do what I did through all them years to get on my feet, the worst he ever said was Greenberg, who was the general manager of the track. He says, Greenberg, he says, you got to just take it easy on the weekends. You know, don't be so obvious. And that was the most I ever got. But Slutsky, when I finally got even in 78, he come to me, I went to him, and I said, I think I owed him 10,000 more. I says, here's the 10,000 I owe. He says, put it in your pocket. He says, are you all straight now? I said, yes. He says, I'm going to talk to Stanley Dancer about giving you a couple of horses. And he did. And the first horse he gave me was Neville Leader. And I got him back to the races. He had a bad bow tendon, and I got him back to the races. I asked Stanley to qualify for him, and he did. And he won the qualifier, and he says, Larry, you did an unbelievable job. The horse is yours.
You were back in the fold. They were
just... them two guys did something that it's just unbelievable. I hate to go into another story, but I'll just say it quickly. When I had that Christmas party in '81, and I had invitations made out for 3,000 people, and I couldn't find a place to hold it. I had Madison Square Garden, but there was no place to house like 1,500 people that come from out of town. So the only place I got a hold of Charles. I got a hold of Bobby Parker, who owned the Concord Hotel, and I says, Bobby, every year you close the hotel for 10 days, a general cleanup. I says, can you open it 3 days early? I want to have a party there. And he did. He says, the only problem is I can't hold 3,000 people. The most I can hold is 1,200, I think. And the hardest job I had was eliminating 1,500, 1,700 people from my guest list, thinking that I had 3,000 friends. And when I borrowed a quarter from a guy when I was sleeping on a park bench, and I asked to send me a gun, and instead of him coming, he called Joe Murata, and Joe Murata come and says, what are you doing? And I says, I can't, I'm gonna go rob that bank, and I'll either have some money or I'm going to get arrested and they'll feed me. I'm hungry. It rained last night. And he took me to Angelo's restaurant on Ridge Road in North Arlington.
Right.
And he says, I was with you when we tried to knock that list of 3,000 people down to 1,500. You know the truth of the matter is, see this table? He says, your true friends, if they were having a party today, all you'd need is this table, and a table for 4. He said, and they might be one seat empty. And that's what you find out when you're broke. If you're never broke and you're never in trouble, you never really know who your true friends are. Never realize
who really cares about you.
You just don't know. And that's the sad part of people that are in good shape all the time. They just think they have, it's just sad. It's a cruel world out there. It's just tough. So anyway, let me get back to the story. So they had every Sunday I used to go up to Monticello to take my mother out to lunch after my father died. And one Sunday there was a fixed race, and I think I told this in another podcast. If I didn't, I'll tell it some other podcast. I'm not going to get into it now. But anyway, they had a bad race. And they called me in for questioning, and I knew because the kid that was in the dining room when I was there with my mother, he come and said to me, he said, Larry, and this is one of the kids that used to work for me, and we got along well. And he said, Larry, if you're going to be here for the last race, bet these numbers. And he gave me the numbers, and they obviously fixed the race. So I was going to leave. My mother says, oh, are you going to bet what that boy told you to bet? Anyway, I bet the race. The race was a bad race. I collected. I gave her a 1,500, whatever I won. And three weeks later, after the investigation went nowhere, they called in all the tellers, and the teller recognized me. Okay. Right. And I wound up losing my license because I wouldn't give these guys up. Now, when they asked me to give these guys up, I had over 100 horses in training. And one of my owners, who I'm going to get into probably in the next podcast, his name was Arron Wagman. And he said to me, he said, what are you doing? He says, give these guys, and he was right what he said. These guys that you're trying to protect, these 4 guys that you're trying to protect, he says, they're living in tack rooms. He says, give them a couple of $100,000 apiece, I'll give them the money. And just tell the commission. I says, I just can't do that. He says, you're going to give up everything that you worked for and all the people that supported you through these years because you don't want to give up 4 guys that in 20 years they'll be in the same tack room, the same thing with no money, and you're going to give them $200,000 each.
But
It'll
you
be
did the
more
right
money.
thing. A real man doesn't give anybody up.
Wait a minute now, hold it. Just wait a second. See what you just said? Okay, that's the question I asked the 40-year-old mob boss and the 85-year-old mob boss. And I went to them and I told them that whole story. And I says to them, what would you do? And the old mob boss said, you did the right thing, kid. Lost everything. Ain't got a fucking quarter. Lost it all. By 1986, I lost all my appeals. All the houses I had went for the appeals in 3 different states. Lost everything. The only thing I had left was a park bench and a fucking pillow. That's all I had. But the old mob guy
But you had the ability to get it all back.
No,
again.
I didn't. I lost my license. There's no getting it back. I lost my license in 1984. By that time, I was 50 years old. Where was I going? With a reputation. A reputation. It's like a guy going to jail for child molestation and trying to open up a child care
right
center.
there,
All right. So I had nowhere to go.
stand corrected.
So the old guy says, you did the right thing. Yeah, okay. I did the right thing. You want to buy me a steak dinner? I did the right thing. You did the right thing. See ya. Okay.
All right.
The young guy.
But then
the
you
young-
still would have felt better if you
the young
did
guy,
the other thing?
Want to listen to what the young guy said? You should have gave him the money. Fuck them. They're probably still in the tack room, probably still broke, and look where you are now. So who do you listen to? The young guy who's the mob boss or the old mustache Pete?
You know
Who
where
do
you can't go wrong? You listen to your heart. That's what you listen to.
My heart
And you
told
can
me
live with-
my
and you
heart
can
told
live
me I
with that.
shouldn't do it, but you know, and this is my advice to young people, especially if I ever had kids. Don't ever listen to your heart. Listen to your brain. Don't ever listen to your heart because it'll fuck you up every time. Don't listen to your heart. Listen to your brain. So here I am today. Today is, what is it, 2023? Still scuffling, still ducking and diving, still doing everything that I didn't have to do had I just paid out 200,000, 200,000, 200,000, 200,000. Because what Arron Wagman said is true. Them same kids, 2 of them are dead. I think 3 of them are dead. And the other one's still in Monticello in a fucking tack room. So what do you think? You still think I did the wrong thing or the right thing?
You still did the right thing because you're here to tell the tale, and your tale has got a hell of a story that's going to be a blockbuster. So let's move on. And
No. You're talking. It could be. It ain't. It could be. It could be. Now, for it to could be, I have to deal with that phony fucking Hollywood crowd. That out. That's why I had to leave California. It's just they're all. It's just all bullshit. But hopefully someday, my TV series that's supposed to be written, that's stopped now because of the writer's strike, will be done, and maybe I'll make back everything. But it's still a question. And you know what I'd like? Here's a good question for everybody.
That's what I'm
to call
hoping
in.
for. I'm hoping
I'd
for
like everybody, the people that are listening, I think in one or 2 podcasts that I saw last, they had something like 3,000-4,000 people watched it. I don't know. I don't keep track of that stuff. But I would like everybody to call, send in, yes, you did the right thing, or no, you did the right thing, because it's something that affected the rest of my life.
That's our email. You can write in for Larry's question.
It's something that I'm at the point now where I'm 83 years old, and where am I going? There's no starting over. The only thing I got going now is looking for a grand slam, and I have another friend that says, "Why are you always looking to hit a grand slam? Load the bases first." Well, sure. If I was
You don't
40
have
years
time
old,
right now to load the bases.
that's what I told him.
Gotta go
If I was
for it.
your age, 40 years old, I'd load the bases. Where the fuck am I going? Anyway, that's it. That's it. I had enough. So
Well,
do what you say. It's something about the
let's let the viewers. If you love what Larry says each week, which I do, I love it tremendously. Please press like and subscribe. And please write in with the email any questions you have for Larry, just like he asked
No,
before.
I want them to answer, was I right or wrong? Should I have paid, should I have given them 4 guys up? They would have lost their license for 6 months and been right back. I wind up, because I wouldn't give them up, I wind up losing my license for life, plus 7 of the wealthiest owners in the country. I lost 100 and something racehorses, my farm, 7 homes, and everything. The only thing I got left at that time was a park bench. So anyway, send in. Was I right or wrong? That's it.
Well, you still have me, Larry.
Yeah, okay. Bye, folks.
Good night.